please welcome to the stage the comedian you came to see, Mr. Rod from Pilgrim. Hello. Hi. How are we doing? Good. Well, thank you so much for coming, first of all. In my experience, this sort of thing is always better when there's people. Which is not always a given in comedy, right? I've just been at the Edinburgh Festival for a month. And at the Edinburgh Festival, there's a lot of shows. There's not enough audience to go around. I'm not saying that I had a bad Edinburgh Festival. But if you were to print off a list of my daily ticket sales for the Edinburgh Fringe 2019, that list could easily be mistaken for binary code. This time 2 weeks ago today, I did this show to 2 people. Which is fine, I'm happy to do it. But then on my way home from that show, I walked past a group of 8 people watching a seagull trying to eat a kebab. That's 4 times my audience. I was like, who's doing the PR for this seagull? This seagull must know people in London. So thanks for coming. We are filming this tonight. Don't let that put you off. Don't let that put pressure on you. Just try and relax. I will say this though. This is what I call a real filming. By which I mean we're filming it once. Whatever happens, happens. Okay? It's not like one of those Netflix filmings. Where they'll film the show 7 nights in a row, wearing the same shirt, and then cut it all together to make a perfect show. I'm not doing that. I have been wearing this shirt for 7 days, but that is just a coincidence. I went to primary school in the countryside, and in the middle of our playground there was a big pile of earth called the mound. And every lunchtime all the boys would climb to the top of it, and we would chant, "Boys on the mound, no girls allowed." And all the girls would be like, "We don't want to go on the mound." It's literally made of dirt. And then we'd be like, "Boys on the mound, no girls allowed." A couple of years ago, I got sick of going on bad dates, and I decided I was going to quit dating. And I was really annoying and smug about it. Like I started announcing it to women. I'd be like, "Sorry ladies, I am off the market. You will never have the chance to date me again." And all the ladies were like, "We don't..." "We don't want to date you. You're literally made of dirt." And I was like, "Boys on the mound." I decided I was going to quit dating after I got stood up on a date at a petting zoo. Now, in case you're wondering, that is the 3rd saddest place that a person can get stood up. Number 2 is a tandem bike showroom. And number 1 is an appointment to get fitted for a pantomime horse. I was there for about 20 minutes. And I realised she wasn't going to show up. And I thought, well, as I'm here, I might as well do some petting. Because as the old saying goes, when in Rome, go to the petting zoo. Seriously, you should. It's called Bioparker. TripAdvisor says it's better than the Vatican. I thought I might as well do some petting, right? So I went and got started. Turns out you can't do that on your own. It is heavily frowned upon. Like, people were glaring at me, giving me funny looks. I don't think that's fair. Why is it okay for 2 people to pet an animal together, It's not okay for one person to pet an animal on their own. Why is it only okay to touch an animal if you gang up on it? Because I've been single for 4 years. I do a lot of stuff on my own. I go to the cinema, I go to restaurants. I'm used to a certain amount of judgment. But I draw the line. I draw the line at being looked at like a weirdo by people who've driven somewhere on a Sunday to touch animals for fun. Nobody should be judging anyone in that situation. Look at this freak on his own at the petting zoo. Now hold my coffee while I fondle this piglet. I'm going to ping its little tail. It's fine. I think single people should get priority at the petting zoo. And we clearly need the companionship more. Like Thorpe Park, they have a single rider queue where they let you jump the queue for the roller coaster if you're on your own. I think the petting zoo should have a similar policy. They could have a sign saying, "You must be this lonely to ride." And that sign is just a picture of Tom Hanks in Castaway. If you want an idea of the level of stigma attached to being alone at a petting zoo, a parent saw what I was doing and she shielded her child from me. And then she took that same child and encouraged him to make friends with a goat. Which means that in our society, being single is considered worse than having horns. Don't go near the single man, kids, he might be dangerous. Instead, come with me and feed oats to the literal symbol of Satanism. I don't want to sound like I'm ranting, but I do feel like single people get quite a raw deal in society. Did you know, for example, the average single person earns half as much as the average couple? It's absolutely disgraceful. Single people are furious. The only reason we're not marching in the streets is that we have nobody to proofread our banners. A singles march would never work, because all the singles on the march would keep getting distracted, trying to hit on the other singles on the march. It'd be like, "We're here, we're alone. What's your favourite film?" The hardest part about writing that joke for me was trying to guess what chat-up lines people use nowadays. I have no idea, I've been out the game too long. My top 2 chat-up lines are, "What's up?" And "Isn't it sad about Woolworths?" I quit dating for a second reason as well. I quit dating because I felt like there was too much pressure on me. You know, there's a lot of pressure on me to sort of meet someone, couple up, start a family. Because I'm a Jewish only child, which means if you go back through my family history, you've got end of the 19th century, fleeing from murderous Cossacks in Russia, making it to Western Europe, early 20th century, surviving the Holocaust, making it to Manchester. My parents didn't meet until later in life. They were in their 40s when they had me, sort of a medical miracle. Now that entire family line is going to end because I stopped talking to a girl on Tinder because she wrote Games of Thrones. I am putting grammar before survival. That's like if my ancestors had refused to be on Schindler's List because he missed out the apostrophe. It's hard being an only child. You know, when you're an only child, you have no basis for comparison. It's very hard to get honest feedback. For example, growing up, I always thought that I was tall. Turns out we just had a short cat. When you're an only child, your parents are sort of unconditionally proud of you, which sounds great, but it can cause problems. For example, when I was 10 years old, I won the award at my school for most improved handwriting. Not best handwriting, most improved. My handwriting went from really shit to quite shit, and they gave me a trophy. I say trophy, it was an unlaminated handwritten certificate, handwritten by the head teacher, in better handwriting than mine, as if to say, stay humble, kid. But my parents, they put this certificate up in their house, on the far left of an empty wall, like in anticipation of all the future awards to come. I went home last Christmas and discovered that they'd moved it to the middle of the wall. It's not the fact that they moved it that gets to me, right? It's the fact that it took them 19 years. They were hopeful for so long. Even this time last year, when I was 28 years old, and I've been working in a post office for the last 5 years, they were still saying, this is the year. This is the year he wins a Grammy. And when people ask for his autograph, it is going to be highly legible. My parents never wanted me to fail growing up. I think that's quite common amongst the parents of only children. You know, for example, every year we used to go on this Easter egg hunt. And I was always really bad at finding the eggs, because I was not a very observant child. You know, as a child, I was always really bad at finding stuff. For example, I could never find Wally. And it was mostly because I was not observant enough to realise that I was looking for him in The Very Hungry Caterpillar. I could never find an egg, and I used to get really upset. So what my parents started doing is they started secretly bringing a cream egg with them and hiding it wherever I was looking for me to find. Now the problem with this plan is that this Easter egg hunt didn't hide cream eggs. It hid cardboard tokens that you had to exchange for cream eggs. So not only was I shielded from failure, I developed the idea that I was some sort of a business genius. Because I'd see the other kids, I'd be like, look at these suckers, trading tokens for cream eggs. I'm getting them wholesale, direct from this bush where I assume they grow. My parents got away with this for 3 years, and then on the 3rd year I finally realised something was wrong, and I decided to confront my parents. So I went over to them and I said, hey, what's going on? Now this was their chance to come clean, but they didn't. They doubled down, and they said, you're just better than everyone else at finding eggs. What a thing to tell a child. That's worse than the time they told me that I didn't need to find Wally because he'd been inside of me all along. A more recent example of this sort of parenting happened about 5 years ago when I did my first full-length comedy show. And it got a 3-star review. And my dad called me up all excited. And he said, that's more than half the stars. It sounded like he was trying to drum up business for an unfinished planetarium. My dad is very much a planetarium half-full sort of man. 3 stars was too generous for that show, right? My first show, I was young, I did my best. It was not a good piece of work. It was very disappointing for the audience. And I took that show, recognition there from someone. I took that show to the Edinburgh Festival in 2014. And I arrived there that year to discover that the venue I was supposed to be performing in wasn't built yet. The builders were behind schedule, so for the first week of the Fringe that year, I was performing on an active building site in a room with no door and temporary walls. Now, performing on a building site was very bad for my self-esteem, because if you work in the arts, you constantly carry this idea around with you that you should get a real job. And that feeling is magnified when you're surrounded by people with real jobs. For example, I was in the toilet one day before a show, and there was a builder in there next to me, cleaning blood off his bicep, whilst I assembled an easel that I was planning to use in a dream sequence. And our eyes met in the mirror, and I gave him a look like, Mondays, right? It's not fair to compare builders to comedians. Builders are just better people. Like our society is steeped in references to building and construction. Builder's tea, builder's breakfast. Nobody talks about a comedian's breakfast. A comedian's breakfast is last night's chips wrapped in a bad review of your own work. Builders are role models, comedians aren't. Kids grow up watching Bob the Builder. He teaches them working together, we get the job done. It's a good message. Although I would argue that Bob the Builder would be a more exciting TV show if the theme tune didn't give away whether or not he can fix it. There's not a lot of jeopardy after that. The theme tune for that show should be Bob the Builder, can we fix it? Bob the Builder, wait and see. My first show on the building site, 4 people came. And then after about 10 minutes, 2 of those people decided they were going to leave. Now, when a room is full, a couple of people can slip out. It's not a big deal. Please don't take that as an invitation. But it's true. When a room is full, a couple of people can leave. Not a big deal. But when you're half the audience, it's very hard to do that without drawing attention. It's like trying to leave a seesaw discreetly. Now, do you remember I said the room had no door? Well, as these 2 people got up to leave, a builder appeared and hammered a door into place over the hole they were trying to leave through, as if to say, you had your chance. It sort of looked like I was a dying Egyptian pharaoh who'd insisted that his audience be buried alive with him. And thousands of years later, archaeologists would find our remains, and they'd say, well, this shouldn't be possible, but somehow most of these bones look disappointed. But look how well preserved they are. That's more than half the bones. I was 24 years old when that story took place. I'm 29 now. And it's funny, as you get older, your priorities start to change. Like that when I was 19, I spent all my time worrying that everyone else was having sex. And now that I'm 29, I spend all my time worrying that everyone else is having sex in houses that they own. I like doing that joke around the country because I can gauge the local economic situation from the level of bitterness in the response. I did that joke recently in a small town in the southwest of England called Thornbury. It's quite a wealthy, middle-aged audience. They didn't laugh, they just stared at me. Like, why don't you own a house? Did you forget to buy a house? I think people in Thornbury think that a rent boy just a boy that rents a house. And they are still disgusted by the idea. My age makes me a millennial, and that's the word people use about us. Or to be more accurate, it's the word that the older generation use incorrectly about the generation younger than us. I don't know if you've noticed this, but millennial's been like a byword for the youth for about 10 years now. And older people haven't realised that in that time, we've grown up a bit. So they'll say stuff like, these millennials with their Minecraft and their fidget spinners. And I'm like, no, the word you're looking for is children. Millennials are not that young anymore. I'm a millennial. I recently put my back out trying to look at my bald spot. That's a millennial activity. I don't need a fidget spinner to hold my attention. I downloaded the Countdown app so that I can solve conundrums while I'm preheating the oven. And what's in the oven? A Victoria sponge. I don't like the word millennial, right? Because it comes from the word millennium. And the word millennium has very negative connotations for me. And it's not just because of Robbie Williams. It's because of what happened to me on Millennium Eve. New Year's Eve 1999 was my 10th birthday. Now having a birthday on New Year's Eve is great, as long as you don't mind spending the last 10 seconds of every birthday listening to your entire friends and family counting down to when it's not your birthday. But that year I really wanted to do something for my birthday. But everything was closed for the millennium. All my friends had plans with their families. So my parents drove me to the one place that was open that night, which was a McDonald's drive-thru, about half an hour from our house. And we got McDonald's, and we ate it in a bus shelter on Weymouth seafront, watching the fireworks from across the bay, heralding the dawn of a new millennium. Me sitting in the corner shivering, learning once again that a fillet of fish is too wet to support candles. Praying that the free toy in my Happy Meal would be human-shaped, so I could say that there were more people at my birthday party. Of course, this was 1999, so all the Happy Meal toys were based on the most popular film of the year, Fight Club. So as it turned out, there was actually one less person at my birthday. The point is, whenever someone calls me a millennial, it takes me back to that night. It puts me in a very negative frame of mind. You know, it's one of my most vivid memories still. To this day, I cannot hear fireworks without tasting fish. Seriously, I was in America a couple of years ago for the 4th of July. I had to say that I was salivating because I love freedom. You might not have guessed from that story or from the whole show up to this point, but something I'm trying to do as I get older is be more positive. I'm worried that I've spent a lot of my 20s being very negative, a lot of my stand-up being very negative. I'm trying to change that. And I read an article on ways to be more positive, and it said the best way to be more positive is to turn every sorry into a thank you. So every time you would have apologised for something, you find a way to say thanks instead. You know, for example, if you're late for something, you don't say sorry I'm late, you say thanks for waiting for me. It's much more positive. Well, like back when I used to work in retail, if a customer complained about our service, we weren't supposed to say sorry. We were supposed to say, thank you for being honest with your feedback. By the way, this gesture here, this is not me speaking from the heart. This is me covering my name badge so they can't report me. Replacing sorry with thanks is great in some situations, like thanks for waiting for me. It's not so good in others. Thank you for letting me run over your cat. It doesn't really work. Like, things got really confusing last Christmas. My friends Alice and Toby bought me the board game Sorry, and I had to send them a thank you note. But I was late sending the thank you note. So the thank you note said, "Dear Alice and Toby, I'm just writing to say thank you for sorry, and also to say thank you for being so patient in waiting for me to say thank you for sorry. In the past, I would have said sorry for forgetting to say thank you for sorry, but I'm trying to be more positive. Thank you for being so understanding. Your unapologetic pal, Martin. P.S. I owe you a new cat." I think the key to being more positive is finding ways to make yourself feel like a winner. You've got to reframe daily tasks as victories. My favourite daily victory is getting my PIN number right. Because every time you do that, you get a little message that says PIN correct. That feels like praise. What I've started doing if I have a bad week, I'll go to the supermarket, I'll fill up the trolley, pay for each item individually. in right every time. Maximise the praise. People in the queue behind me are like, what the hell are you doing? I turn around, they say, I'm winning. That's I'm 8 for 8 here. Which is also the first 3 digits of my PIN. Yeah, the other thing I'm trying to do more of as I get older is exercise. But it's hard, right? It's hard because the only sport that I enjoy is the French sport of boule. Do we know boule? A couple of bouligans in the house? If you don't know boule, it's a French sport. It's like a cross between curling and bowls. It's played in parks by the elderly. It takes ages. And I love the fact that they called it boule. Right, because boule just means ball. Imagine the confidence of inventing a sport that dull and long-winded and being like, yeah, this is probably going to be the main ball sport. We'll just call it boule, save everyone some time. That's like discovering cauliflower and then naming it food. With that attitude, I'm surprised France isn't just called country. I looked up the definition of exercise, just to make sure that I was doing it right. And it said, exercise is defined as anything that raises your heart rate significantly. Now, I'm a very anxious person. I get stressed out very easily. Turns out I've been exercising pretty much my entire life. Even worrying that I don't get enough exercise is a form of exercise. With that in mind, I've come up with my own anxiety-based fitness regime. Number 1, have a bath when you know you've got an Amazon parcel coming. Number 2, make a bowl of cereal before checking if you have milk. Number 3, make eye contact with literally anyone. Number 4, agree to meet someone at a time that ends with ish. Sometimes I'll do all 4 on the same day, call it a pentathlon. Now I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking, a pentathlon should have 5 events. But knowing that I don't have enough events in my pentathlon, all of these tips can be found in my new book, Worry Yourself Sexy. Available now on Amazon. Delivery options, first class, second class, and bath time. 29 feels like a strange age. It feels like a very transitional age. You know, for example, I never know what to wear at this age. You know, whatever the weather, whatever the season, I can't get it right. Now, my winter wardrobe makes me look like a divorced dad whose son has died in a tragic skateboarding accident. And I'm wearing his clothes as part of the grieving process. My summer wardrobe's no better. My summer wardrobe makes me look like a 12-year-old boy in a Goosebumps book. Every time I put on shorts, I look like I'm going to solve a mystery with my friends. That mystery is, why did I think I could wear shorts? I've been wearing denim shorts and trainers every summer since 1995. There is only one other person who's been wearing that outfit for that long, and that person is Crash Bandicoot. You've got to be careful with trainers in your late 20s, early 30s, right? Because you're still allowed to wear them. But if you choose the wrong kind, you can give off a real air of desperation. Did you know if you're 29 years old and you hold a pair of Converse All-Stars up to your ear, you can hear the sound of your band never quite making it? It's not just the clothing that I dislike about the summer, right? It's all of it. You know, I hate the summer. I think summer is the worst season by far. You know, summer is the ITV2 of seasons. It's loud and it's crass, And every year it gets a little bit more extreme because of our failings as a species. The worst thing about summer is you've got to do stuff. Like people invite you to things, it's rude to say no. And thanks for coming, by the way. I do appreciate that. It's true though, like barbecues. Don't like barbecues. Never invite me to a barbecue. Inviting me to a barbecue is like saying, hey Martin, you know how you're terrified of social interaction? Well, imagine that, but also everything's on fire. I've come up with a cheat though. I've come up with a strategy. What I do in the summer, if I have to leave the house now, I take a pint of milk with me. And that way, if somebody stops me in the street and invites me to some spontaneous outdoor fun, I can say, I'm so sorry, I've got to get this back to the fridge. That plan is a win-win, right? Because if you succeed, you can celebrate your escape with a refreshing glass of cold milk. And if you fail, you can commiserate with a delicious bottle of cheese. It's not just the summer that I hate, it's the sun as an object, right? I think the sun has a bad attitude. The sun thinks that it has the right to make me sweaty and uncomfortable, just because it is essential for the ongoing survival of all life on Earth. I find that arrogant. Call me old-fashioned, but I believe that sweating should be about fear and shame, not regulating body temperature. Do we know the song "The Sun Has Got Its Hat On and It's Coming Out Today"? I would bet good money that that hat is a fedora, because the sun is a prick. I developed my hatred of hot weather when I was 21, and I lived in Spain for a year. I was studying Spanish at university at the time, and I went over there as a way to improve my Spanish. Because I don't know if you know this about Spain, but over there, Spanish is all the rage. They absolutely love it. They love Spanish so much in Spain that they named their country after it. I didn't end up learning much Spanish on my year abroad, right? Because I found a loophole. What I did is I pretended to be Spanish, and I studied English at a Spanish university. Right, you can just do that. All you need is a slight tan and a reckless attitude towards your own future. And I learned really early on that the Spanish university English syllabus is very similar to the British GCSE English syllabus. So I was able to spend the whole year just handing in old essays that I found on my laptop, getting the best marks every time. They'd be like, wow, you know so much about Animal Farm. And I was like, see, I do. The first thing I had to do when I got to Spain was find a place to live. You might have heard the Spanish expression, mi casa es su casa. Turns out that is not legally binding. You do have to pay for your casa. So I went flat hunting. And the first place I looked at, it was going very well. The landlord was showing me around. And then I opened a door that I should not have opened. And behind that door was a room full of apples. Not apples in boxes. Loose. The best way to describe it is, you know the elevator scene in The Shining? Where the lift door opens and all the blood spills out. It was like that, except instead of blood, it was apples. And instead of Jack Nicholson, it was even more apples. But the landlord saw what I was doing, and he ran over, and he slammed the door, and he looked me right in the eye, and he said, never go in the apple room. Again. And he said it in a way that implied, if you ever touch my apples, I will break every bone in your tiny English body. And no one will come to help you, because I've got enough apples to keep away every single doctor in Spain. Just because you're dressed like Crash Bandicoot doesn't mean you can go around picking up fruit that isn't yours. You almost got a round of applause. I didn't move into the Apple house. I moved into the next place I looked at, which I ended up sharing with a Spanish girl called Alba. Now, Alba was about 5 years older than me. She had a pink mohawk, she had 2 pet rats, and she had a tattoo on her shoulder of a pair of scissors and a dildo. And they were crossed like a coat of arms. Like she came from a long family line of people who like doing 2 things. Cutting stuff and fucking stuff. Lacerating and fornicating. Scissoring and that one's the same. Alba had 2 jobs. She was a hairdresser and she was also a drug dealer. Now you might think there's not a lot of crossover between those 2 jobs, but as it turns out, it's actually quite a lot of common ground. The main similarity being that in either case, if you make one wrong move, they will cut you. Alba was not a very professional hairdresser. She was also not a very professional drug dealer. She tended to mix the 2 worlds quite heavily. She was constantly high on her own supply, and whenever she got high, she would offer me a free haircut. And I would always say yes, because young people are stupid. Now, these haircuts could last anywhere from 30 seconds to 4 hours, depending on which substances Alba had ingested beforehand. You do not know the meaning of poor customer service until you've had a haircut from someone who is so stoned that she insists on apologising to each hair individually. You do not know the meaning of fear until you've had a haircut from someone who has taken so much cocaine that when she goes to cut your hair, she takes a run up. That was actually the year when I started to go bald. I'm pretty sure my body did that on purpose as a form of self-defense. Although, to be fair to Alba, of the 2 objects tattooed on her arm, I'm glad that she chose to attack me with a pair of scissors. I lived with Alba for 3 months, and then I went back to the UK for Christmas. I came back to Spain in January and discovered that while I'd been gone, Alba had burned down my kitchen and then run away. She just fled. And in the midst of the charred wreckage of my kitchen, I found a note from Alba, which said, "Dear Martin, I don't want to nag, but can you please do your washing up? You're not the only person who lives here." And that note was not burned in the slightest, suggesting that she wrote it after the like she burned down my kitchen and then was like, "Well, I've done my share of the housework. Nothing more cleansing than fire." I can't believe she left a note. I think I might have met the world's only passive-aggressive arsonist. "Calling the fire brigade, are we? I'm surprised your phone works since you never text me back." "Better tell them the fire spread to the pavement. You might not have heard of it. It's where some people put the bins out every day." Actually, this isn't my first fire. I start fires all the time, which you'd know if you ever asked me about my day. I left Spain and I came back to the UK and I moved to Sheffield. And I got a job at Poundland in Sheffield. Now, me and Poundland have a very long, complicated history. I've worked in 3 Poundlands in my life. I'm one of the only people in the world whose CV contains the phrase, "reason for leaving Poundland," to work in another Poundland. I've worked in Poundlands in Exeter, Sheffield and Bristol. And my long-term goal is to get 4 more Poundland jobs in Truro, Doncaster, Norwich and Rotherham. and then I'll be able to plot them on a map and it'll make a disappointed face. But I worked a lot of night shifts at this Poundland. I often had to walk home late through quite unpleasant bits of Sheffield. And one night on my way home, I got mugged. Now, the two guys who mugged me, I'm pretty sure were beginners when it came to mugging. Muggles, as they're known. I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure one of the first things they teach you about mugging is if you want to get rich from mugging, do not mug a man as he leaves Poundland. These guys didn't play by the rules. They saw me, they were like, that's our guy. He's clearly rolling in it. He works somewhere that's named after money. I didn't really stand up for myself during the mugging. I sort of wished I had. I wish I'd said something at least. I wish I'd come up with some Poundland related tough talk. Maybe I could have incorporated a few of our products into it. I could have been like, I'm going to come down on you like a collapsing display of Carol Vorderman fitness DVDs. I'm going to bring you down like the failed state that this Fanta is from. I'm going to break you like these headphones already are. But I didn't do any of that. I just got mugged. And it was not a very lucrative mugging. The muggers made off with £6 and an iPod full of Blink-182 songs. And remember, they had to divide that between two of them. That is £3 and Wink-91 each. But after the mugging, I felt very vulnerable. I had to keep walking home the same way. I didn't feel safe. So at that point, I made the misguided decision to start lifting weights. And I went on the Argos website, where all the top bodybuilders go. And I ordered a set of weights. And I realised, even before they arrived, that it was a stupid idea. I realised I'm not the sort of person who should be lifting weights. This does not work with muscles. No one's ever looked at me and thought, I wish there was more of him. There's nothing in my lifestyle that requires muscles. It's not that hard to open a jar of Dolmio pasta sauce. Puppets do it. Elderly puppets. When's are your leg day? Never. So I thought what I'll do is I'll just return the weights. So I went back on the Argos website on the return section. And it said, to make a return, you need to print off a postage label and then take the box to your nearest post office. Now, the problem was my nearest post office was about 10 minutes walk away, and I was not strong enough to lift the box of weights. So I realised at that moment that in order to return the weights, I had to start lifting weights. I had to get in training to quit. I don't know if you've ever been in training to quit. It's very hard to get motivated. Now, the reason that I was in Sheffield at this point is that I was doing a master's in Spanish translation at the University of Sheffield. And I realised really early on that it was not the course for me. I wasn't enjoying it, I wasn't making friends. And also by this point, my Spanish had declined to the point that it was almost non-existent. The only Spanish phrase that I picked up on my year abroad was "Porque no dejamos las tijeras y hablamos de esto," which translates as, why don't we put down the scissors and talk about this? So I thought what I'll do is I'll just drop out. I'll drop out of my course. So I went and spoke to my personal tutor and I said, I'm thinking of leaving. And she said, that's absolutely fine. As a courtesy, you need to go and tell the head of department in person that you want to leave. Now, the head of department was a Spanish man, didn't speak any English. It was expected that by this point in our education, that wouldn't be an issue. Of course, for me, that was not the case. So I realised at this moment that in order to drop out of my Spanish degree, I had to learn Spanish. Now, quite by coincidence, both the weights and the Spanish degree had a 30-day grace period. during which I could return them for a full refund. So I spent the month of October 2012 lifting weights so I could stop lifting weights, and learning Spanish so I could stop learning Spanish. I'd be in my room every night like, uno, dos. The fact that I was just learning the numbers. No business being on this. Anyway, long story short, it was a partial success. I succeeded in dropping out of my degree. I failed to return the weights. I did not become strong enough to lift that box. The thing is, though, you already knew that, right? Like, you can all see me. It comes as no surprise to anyone in this room that I did not take to weightlifting. The problem with that story is that my own body acts as a spoiler. It's like if I came out here with no eyes and said, I'm going to tell you a story about why you shouldn't keep crows as pets. I was in my early 20s when those last couple of stories happened, and I'm glad that I'm not anymore. Like, I'm glad that I'm getting older. You know, I was never good at being young. Like, there's stuff you've got to do in your 20s that I never enjoyed. Like casual sex. Never got into it. And I am choosing to frame that as a choice. I've had one night stand in my life. It didn't go well. It was about 6 years ago. I went on a date with a girl, and we went back to my house, and we had sex. And during the sex, she had a nosebleed. Now, I don't think the nosebleed was related to the sex. My technique is not what you would call exhilarating. Sex with me lasts for ages, but is rarely fun. I'm very much the bull of sex. Anyway, she spent the night, and it was lovely. And then the next day she had to leave really early because my mum was coming to visit. So she left at about 8 in the morning. And in her haste, she forgot her earrings. So I texted her and I said, hey, you've forgotten your earrings. And she said, don't worry, just put them somewhere safe. I'll get them next time I see you. Now, I'd recently flown to Spain, and I still had some of those little plastic bags that you use to take toiletries to airport security. So I put the earrings in one of those bags. And as I was doing this, my doorbell rang. So I put the bag down on my bed, I went and opened the door to my mum. Now, something you need to know about my mum, she's always worried that I'm not eating enough. And whenever she comes to visit, she always brings me loads of food. And as usual, she brought a big bag of snacks. And she said, can I put these in your room? And without thinking, I said, sure, go ahead. And then a few seconds later, I heard the sound of my mum screaming. Because what had happened is she'd gone into my room and she'd found my bed sheets covered in blood. And on top, a little plastic bag with a pair of women's earrings. From her point of view, it looked like I'd murdered a girl and then started investigating the crime myself. And the thing is, I know that my mum must have been so conflicted in that moment, right? Because a part of her must have been upset that I'd apparently done something awful. But I know that a small part of her must have been thinking, maybe I should hide a few more clues for him to find. I'm glad that I'm not that age anymore, that's the point. I think youth is overrated. You know, like there's a saying, he's got youth on his side. I think that's a stupid saying. You know, I had youth, it was never on my side. It was doing everything it could to destroy me. If someone who's on your side does not convince you to join 3 separate ska punk bands, do you know how you know you've been in too many ska punk bands? You've been in a ska punk band. Someone who's on your side certainly doesn't convince you to name one of those ska punk bands Damn Good Fondling. And then forget the password to your band's MySpace so you can never delete it. Now 12 years later, whenever anyone Googles you looking for comedy stuff, they just get the words Damn Good Fondling. and a photograph of you grinning like a proud pervert above a logo that is the silhouette of a naked man with a trumpet for an erection. Do we know ska punk, by the way? If you don't know ska punk, the best way to describe it is imagine reggae, but played quickly by white teenagers. Got to play this reggae at double speed. That way we'll have more time for Tekken. The best thing about being in a teenage ska punk band, you get to wear braces on your trousers and your teeth. Just wait till I get these babies off. My teeth are going to be as straight and white as the piano keys on my tie. I think ska punk is a really good example of how you can combine two very cool things and create something that is not cool in the slightest. Like punk music, very cool, ska music, very cool. Put those two things together, ska punk, not cool. It's sort of like how shoes are cool. They protect our feet, they can be very stylish. And condoms are cool. They stop the spread of disease, they prevent unwanted pregnancy. But you put those two things together, you get Crocs, not cool at all. Although I will say this for Crocs, as a contraceptive, condoms 95% effective. Crocs 100%. It's so weird to me that ska punk in 2007 is like a historic reference now. I feel like it doesn't have the same credibility as other generations' musical memories. Like baby boomers, they can say stuff like, I saw Hendrix at Woodstock back in '69. I can't reply to that with, yeah, well I saw Less Than Jake at Reading in '06. Did they play the national anthem satirically? No, they played their own songs adequately. And then I got a falafel. Our band's name actually got us in trouble at one point. In 2008, we won the Battle of the Bands competition at my school, which sounds impressive, but the only reason we won that year is that there was a flu virus going around the school. So the only bands who weren't sick were the ones who hadn't been kissing anyone. It was pretty much just us and a supergroup made up of the bass players from all the other bands. It was not a cool lineup that year. It was less Battle of the Bands, more Warhammer Club the musical. But after we won, the school refused to put our name on the trophy because they said that damn good fondling was offensive. So they put DGF instead, just the initials. Now at the time we were furious, but I think in hindsight it was probably for the best, because not only did DGF prevent our legacy from being tarnished with an offensive band name, it also acted as a handy reminder for the chords in all of our songs. But our prize for winning the Battle of the Bands is that we got to do a gig in Poland. The town that I grew up in was twinned with a small town in Poland, and we got to go over there and do a show. Now this town, it was right on the German border, and it had suffered horribly in the Second World War. It had been occupied by the Germans and the Russians. It had been bombed by both sides. 80% of its buildings had been destroyed. Most of its young men had died. And yet, despite all that, 11 years after our performance, the locals are still arguing over whether or not we were the worst thing to ever happen to them. As we got up on stage and launched into our cover of Real Big Fish's cover of Aha's Take On Me, old ladies in the audience were turning to one another and saying, I'm just so glad that all of our husbands aren't alive to see this. The gig went very badly, and then afterwards we had to attend a reception dinner with dignitaries from the town. And at this dinner, the mayor of the town came over to speak to us, and he said, I just wanted to say thank you for visiting our town, but I'm afraid we did not enjoy your performance. And you will not be invited to perform here again. And we said, we don't want to perform here again. The town is mostly rubble, and the locals do not appreciate ska punk. And then the mayor leaned in really close, and he said, chłopcy na kopcu, which is Polish for boys on the mountain. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I hope you've had a good time. If you've enjoyed the show, that's great. I'm happy. If you didn't enjoy it, if you thought that it was crap, thank you for being honest with your feelings. Have a good night. Thank you.